Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. This is episode 89. I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I am Francis.
Hey everybody, welcome back. So this episode is a history episode, first week of the month. And we are taking a break from our World War II episodes and talking the history of civil rights. And civil rights is a story. And you know, Snakes and Otters, we love stories and storytellers. Mm-hmm. And I think we probably consider ourselves a little bit of storytellers as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Especially since I got two budding novelists here at the table with me.
Well, you got your own idea. You're kicking around.
That's right.
I do have a couple of ideas.
Because, you know, at some point, we will launch the Snakes and Otters Publishing House.
That's true. That's
that
exactly
would be great.
Right. Yes,
we will dominate all media.
True Renaissance men are multi-talented.
That's right.
So, you know some of the characters in the civil rights story, but I wanted to take this episode and talk about some of the other characters that were important. You probably have heard their names here and there, but I think it's important that the names not just be remembered, but they be talked about.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's especially true because in my looking for some of the lesser known civil rights leaders, you know, obviously you're going to run into all the big names, which, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. is the one that everybody gravitates to.
We did a whole episode
on him, rightly so.
Yes.
But so many of the others became leaders either because there were specific social issues that they were speaking out against, or because of some tragedy that had happened that drove them to their activism, which I think has its own poignancy and its own power as stories. You know, Martin Luther King Jr., starting out, he was doing it because he saw the injustice, not because of the personal tragedy. Obviously, it was not an easy life. He didn't have that, somebody wasn't murdered. He wasn't,
there's not an inciting incident. It's bigger than that.
Right. There's not an inciting incident that same way.
Right.
And to me, that I think struck me more so with some of the other stories that I was looking at.
Yeah, because some of those do. In fact, some of those...
Almost all of them seem to.
And many of these are not about activism at all.
Right.
And that's kind of...
simple justice.
Well, or just occurrences. We'll get into that here. I mean, it's easy to remember Dr. King and Rosa Parks who stood up and who made a conscious choice.
Well, technically, she did not.
Well, that's correct. That's right. Oh, boy, that's right. Exactly. That's
Walked right into that.
That's sure, just like it. Running
sat
into a
down
door.
where she wanted.
She stayed where she wanted. Exactly.
Right.
And Malcolm X, who was definitely an activist and things like that. But some of the ones that we're going to talk about, they just happened to, something happened. And yet they have become part of the story.
They're part of the story, the martyrs, icons, leaders, all the way around. The first person I wanted to talk about that I've always found so fascinating because of his bravery is James Meredith. And James Meredith was the first black man to enroll at the University of Mississippi. Inspired by John F. Kennedy to do so. And that's pretty darn brave.
It was, yeah. What year are we talking about here?
He in the early 60s.
Yeah.
He in 1962.
62, yeah. So I couldn't remember if it was during the Kennedy administration or not, because there's something similar that goes on in Alabama at the same time under Wallace. And, of course, and Forrest Gump was there. We've seen that one and stuff like that. Picks up the book and stuff like that. But you're right. There's a there's a choice involved here on his part, which not all of the people we'll talk about will have that choice. But he certainly did, and the fact that he did what he did is obvious, the reasoning behind it. This is an injustice that needs to be righted, and someone must step up to do this. Somebody has to be first, and he did so in an area that he knew. I mean, he could be killed. His family could be killed. And you can tell us more about all the story itself and what happened.
Pardon me. Of course, it was aided by the NAACP in filing suit because obviously it wasn't granted admission right away.
Well, sure, yeah.
He had to apply twice, and he was a veteran. And if you take, black off of the resume,
There's no reason.
There's no reason not to be in.
Right.
But because he's a black man, he was
this is
denied
Mississippi.
admission.
Yeah,
in
and
Mississippi.
it's a state. See, that's kind of what part of this is once you go federal versus state, particularly in the South, that's its own battle cry.
It is.
And that's also it's kind of a euphemism too.
Well, yeah,
a stealth way of institutionalizing racism for people that don't want to be called it but still want to do it.
Yeah, in the early 20th century, when a good deal of the Confederate monuments that have been taken down went up, these are not dating back to right after the Civil War. These are
1900s, 1910s.
Yeah, the first 10 to 15 years, 20 years maybe of the 20th century when these went up. That's when the lost cause transformed into states' rights. Mm-hmm. Which, yes, there's that political aspect because that's the political maneuver by which the South wanted to keep their slaves.
Right, yeah.
And there's a lot of truth in that rallying cry that, maybe the federal government doesn't belong in certain things. This obviously is not one of them. Mm. But yeah, far too often states' rights
that's how they
have become that euphemism.
Yeah,
it has dirtied what is actually a good thing to remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
forever
federalism is a real thing and it works, but
ultimately,
when you use it to hide behind it for a nefarious purpose, you're sullying the idea of federalism.
Well, federalism itself is by definition should be neutral.
Yes,
it's what your reasons for applying it are.
Yeah,
I
was talking about not that they had sullied federalism, but
sullied state rights,
anti-federalism.
Yes. Yeah. So that anybody who cries out states' rights, the government doesn't have any business being here. You're automatically now seen in a different light.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's become a buzzword. That as soon as you say that, it's been co-opted by this radical side that you can't say it now in a legitimate argument because all of a sudden, wait a minute, that's the argument of these radicals, and I'm being kind. That
we are a family show.
Right, that's right. Well, it's tainted. It's tainted the term.
Yes,
we don't like tainted language.
But anyways, we kind of got off down a rabbit hole there.
But back to he did file in federal court. And
it's the only place he could win.
And he won and was
which
granted admission.
Which is an argument for federalism.
Yeah.
That sometimes it's necessary. When you can't get a fair trial, essentially, because of systemic biases against you in your locality. I mean, think about it. In a criminal case, if it rises to the level of everybody knows about this, you move the venue to give the defendant a fair trial. That's kind of what happened here.
So, but he was able to eventually enroll and did spend 2 semesters at the University of Mississippi, and others followed in his footsteps. And
the world was forever changed.
And he was a pioneer who changed the world.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing, the pioneer opens up the possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's the first guy that finds gold.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first guy that lands on the shores of a new land.
Mm-hmm.
All the rest, he's the one who makes it possible. All the rest who come behind that end up doing, the lion's share because of the sheer numbers.
For good or ill, sometimes.
For good or ill.
Yeah.
They're doing the lion's share of the trailblazing. And that's one of the things that really, I think, is important to remember when we talk about the unsung heroes, so to speak. It's not just the leaders of the movement. It's especially the guys who followed him. The people who followed Rosa Parks and stayed off the buses for over a year.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the folks who rode fire.
Right.
That got into
there's the freedom rides.
That's right. Very much
happened.
so.
All of those things, we don't know most of their names, which is unfortunate. It's there's no way around that. I mean, that's just the way history works.
I would like to think local folklore does keep many of them alive.
Yes, but I mean, as far as a people nationally, it's most of those names are forever lost to the national memory. Whether they're lost locally or in history books is a different thing. That's why I think this is such a great episode to do, just because to go a little bit deeper on remembering it's not just the guy who stands up first. There's all the other people that follow behind that are just as important, because you got to keep that alive. Because if he had gone his 2 semesters and nobody else had followed him, it was a wasted opportunity.
It was an asterisk.
Yeah.
At best.
Yeah. Yeah. So
he inspired that coming behind, which is important. That's what the Trailblazers are great for.
And barrier breakers too.
Yeah,
because once that was broken, once you had it codified in law, then it couldn't stand. Racism couldn't stand.
Right. It's the Little Rock Nine. It's those who are willing to go first are important, and so are the ones that followed after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why it's important. I think again, they're all characters in the story.
Yeah.
And every character is important to the story, and you got to keep that name and keep talking about these folks, and keep that alive.
Well, he has a happy ending, but not everybody that you talk with about.
No,
does.
Unfortunately, not everybody.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
so do you guys want to take one?
No. I want you to get to the next. The first one right there listed on your list because that's what I want to talk about.
Oh, you want to talk about Emmett Till?
Emmett Till, yes. That's the
Emmett Till was a young man from Chicago visiting family in Mississippi in 1955. And in one of these, kind of things, supposedly he said something sexual to a white woman who owned a grocery store and was grabbed up off the streets. And
By
basically,
the woman's husband who ran the store. He was away on a business trip, and her brother.
Yeah. And essentially, they took him to the riverside and killed him and
dumped the body.
And
this is a young man. This is not an adult.
He's
he's
14 years old.
Yeah, he's under 18. I remember that.
Yeah, he's 14, and it could have just been another, black man dead in Mississippi, but his mother had his body brought back up to Chicago.
Yes, and had an open casket.
And a very large funeral. And this news then, this story, captured the country.
Right, because there were pictures of the body in the casket, and that went viral for the day.
For 1955, yeah.
Right. And that was extremely important. She was one of the ones that I was going to mention because that took a lot of bravery for her to do.
Yes.
That took not just bravery as far as physical harm, because there was certainly that element. But I mean, think about that. Her son was so badly beaten that the only way, because he was living with an uncle.
Yes.
Right. And the uncle, the only way that he could identify the body, because his face was so badly pulverized, was by a ring that he wore and the initials on it. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the reasons why the two men got off, was acquitted, because the jury said, well, you didn't properly identify the body.
So we don't know who's been killed here.
Right. So which is essentially saying, we know these guys killed somebody, but we don't know it's the guy you're accusing them of.
Wink, wink, shake, shake.
Right.
There's that biased system again.
Right. So for her to have that open casket funeral for her son, when you think about what your 14-year-old son, freshman in high school age, which is the same age as my son, and to display his battered and beaten face and body like that, that to me, that's just an astounding act of moral courage.
Well, it is, because because she didn't let her obviously traumatic emotions push her back into submission. That was the whole point: is we will not submit.
She also was one of those. I'm sure she had her moments, but she said, I never hated them for this. She didn't turn into a revenge movement for her. She wanted justice, obviously, which unfortunately there was no justice.
Yeah. Yeah, there's never really anybody punished.
Not in 55, but that this was one of those moments that moved the needle in the nation's eyes. You could not help the Civil Rights Act in many respects gained ground as a needed thing in Mr. and Mrs. America's idea because of Emmett Till.
Right. And this is, we talk about the Civil Rights Act. Most people talk about 64.
64, yeah.
But there were several prior to this, and several presidential orders. Truman first desegregating the military.
Yeah.
And then Ike, I believe his was the one opening up economic opportunities for government contract in the defense industry was the primary focus of that.
And sending the National Guard
and
to
sending the
Little
National
Rock,
Guard
to Arkansas.
which that was a huge deal too.
Yes.
that was really big.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously those are big important things, but they underpin and support the other stuff.
They would, in very, very many respects, these were all dipping toes in the water to try to do something. I think, and I'm kind of projecting here. I think they recognize there's a huge injustice here. I don't know that we have enough political capital and clout to make the changes happen, except incrementally.
Right. Well, you do what you can when you can.
That's exactly it.
I mentioned some of the parallels with abortion in the show prep, and does the law come first, or do you have to change the hearts and minds? As I propose, I think it's both. You have to start with hearts and minds of some in order to get the law changed.
Right.
And you change what you can.
And you take opportunities.
And
Emmett Till is a great example of that because his mother saw the opportunity.
Yes, to turn a tragedy
into something much bigger than that. And I'm not sure she was even thinking as far-reaching as it turned out to be.
Right, probably not. Who could know?
Who could possibly know?
She just wanted to make the world known that this horrible thing had happened.
Which
don't
Emmett
forget
Till is
about
just the
him.
one we know about because look through the 100 years prior to that, how many other unknowns were killed in similar or worse ways that never got the moment for justice at all. So it was not just Emmett Till in that casket, but it was all those that went before. And many that went after, too.
That's very poetic, sir.
Well, and I think that had to have been on the minds of many, and I'm sure
certainly, though, whether it was his mom understood that or not, I don't know. But certainly, certainly many in the country did after that, because a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yep.
It changes hearts.
And probably the Civil Rights Act does not happen if television had not come along yet, because you get to see a lot of this stuff in your home. Why is the Tet offensive seen as a horrible defeat for the U.S. when it was actually a victory? Because of the coverage on television.
That's right. Yeah, and the World War II had far greater numbers and far more opportunities, but it was a different thing. And part of that was media, but I don't want to assign them all the power for that.
Well, there's a media aspect to it, but I mean, the media was a lot more deferential.
Mm-hmm.
And the media was not embedded like they became.
That's right. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. So but it's here. It's at home. There's no way.
It's on your TV every night.
Well, it's unfiltered.
It's unfiltered.
Media and embedded in World War II meant a writer from
Ernie Powell,
Time or someplace or like Life was with troops, and then you got
their report,
his perspective that he is a storyteller, so he told a story. But when you
he was also subject to being censored too, of course.
Yeah, but if it's a camera, it's your own eyes.
Yeah,
you make the decision. There's nobody telling you a story.
Right. Well, it's like the Vietnamese guy shooting the guy in the head.
Yeah.
We've seen that picture.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sort of thing that is incredibly important for so many reasons, but not the least of which is it makes it real. The pictures make it real. So the whole civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, it's a perfect storm of media, television, newspapers, still hugely important, all covering these things essentially real time.
Mm-hmm. Pulling the mask off of awful things that the perpetrators didn't think anything of.
And that's what's really insidious.
That's exactly
we have a hard time understanding this, given the age we are. We are all born after the Civil Rights Act was passed. Granted, a year and 2 years, for those.
Sure,
but it's still, we came of age after.
Yeah, in a post-Civil Rights Act world.
Yeah, and I don't think you can underestimate the difference in attitudes, even in such a short time.
That's right.
And so it's really hard to grasp some of these things that two men could literally go to a man's house, drag out a 14-year-old boy, beat him nearly to death, make him carry some kind of flywheel for a cotton gin, which is huge, heavy. The article I read said it was like 75 pounds.
Yeah.
Beat him to death, tie him up with barbed wire to that weight, and throw him in the river.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably thought his body would never be found.
Yeah.
They probably thought nobody would care.
Stupid is as stupid does, Mrs. Blair.
Yeah, and I think that's a big key of well, so what? Just another
Right.
Yeah. Another
that
one
word
Yeah.
in the river.
And that seems unfathomable to me.
It is.
It's
today.
It is today, but I mean, I have a hard time even wrapping my head around how people can think like that.
Yeah. How are they conditioned to think that way as normal?
Well, that's just it. They're conditioned.
Exactly. The conditioning. And that kind of, you go back earlier than that. And you've got, 150, 200 years of conditioning that the black man is subhuman.
Right.
You've got generational, the way into racism is generational, but so is the way out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It takes time to fix that. And we're kind of at that moment, if you wanted to put a stake in the ground, when it all changed, when it turned, it's that, for lack of a better term, of course, it's a process. It's that Act 64.
Right. Well, yes. Yeah. It is the defining moment of
it's
the
a
movement.
Convenient
yeah
demarcation line. I get it.
And I think what it did, and what all of these stories have done, is that it made it wrong, capital W.
Yeah.
For this to be the way normal people think.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean institutional effects of racism went away. It didn't mean individual racists went away. But it was no longer acceptable as the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
right.
always closet racists after that. There's closet racists now. There's open racists now.
Yeah.
Always will be, because that's part of the fallen nature.
But they're more and more marginalized, fortunately.
Right. So making that's what we grew up in, is that it's just not acceptable to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're at the point where it's now becoming not acceptable for the vestiges of the institutional racism,
right,
or the institutional good old boy network to cover up things.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that in the church.
Well, sure.
That's no longer acceptable.
Well, that's right. Shine the clear light of truth, to use an image, and the rats scurry away.
Right.
Sometimes you have to, put the light in the dark corners and purge yourself. I mean, a little revolution now and again is a healthy thing.
Yes.
So that's exactly what we're talking about here.
As Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must sometimes be watered with the
blood of patriots.
Blood of patriots.
Yeah.
And a few tyrants.
That's right. Yes.
Well, the light of truth, that's a very apt metaphor, I think.
Well,
especially for Emmett Till.
I stole it from John's Gospel, the light of the world. I mean, I didn't.
But that's what his mother did, is shined a light on something that it was easy for people to cover their faces and not know what's going on.
And she did not flinch from the opportunity. She had the forum, and part of it was because of where she lived versus where this happened, and it broke it all open. In many respects, I think that's kind of the big dog daddy moment where things changed.
Yeah.
Granted, it's a process. Lots of things happen, but wow,
it's the tipping point.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those major tipping points. Well, what else you got there?
Let's talk about another martyr. This is a story that is very close to home and really hits home for us here. Alberta Odell Jones, the first black woman to pass the bar in Kentucky and to be appointed a city attorney here in Jefferson County, Kentucky. So,
and what year was she appointed?
This is in the early 60s. She disappeared in 1965.
Year I was born.
They found her body in the Ohio River. And of course, it was going to be swept under as, a drowning.
Right.
But they found her car and there was blood in the car. So it became clear that
foul play had happened.
Someone lured her out of her home in the evening, and then got her out of her car, killed her, and threw her off the Sherman Minton Bridge.
Now, was it because I know the name, but I'm not familiar with the details of it. Certainly not since I didn't grow up here. I don't even know how much you guys are familiar with it.
Well, it happened the year I was born. It was long past at that point.
But you know what? Yeah. This is one that locally you're talking about. Local memory.
The local it should still be here.
It should be here.
It should be here. That's correct. Yeah,
but it's not.
It's not. There's very, very little institutional memory in Louisville of this. It's just
Did they ever catch you? Did
no. No one's ever been arrested or prosecuted.
Oh my God.
For the crime, and it's one of those that every once in a while pops up on the news, and someone will say it's still open, and there are funds from the federal government to continue the investigation. But I mean, again,
Somebody said
it happened
55 years later.
it's
then-
1965.
Yeah.
Whoever has done it is almost certainly dead as well. But it is, I mean, this is one that we should know here in this town.
May she rest in peace.
There should be, I mean, there really should be an Alberta Odell Jones Street or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
park.
I'm surprised
something
that we
named
didn't.
for her.
Yeah, that should be done.
She's both. I mean, she was
A pioneer and a martyr.
a pioneer and a martyr. And
I'm glad you mentioned the word martyr because I was thinking about this when we were doing when I was thinking about this when we were preparing for this. Martyr is the right word, but it's not the right word because martyr, at least in the classic sense, implies somebody who willingly gives their life for a cause. I like the word victim better because in her case and in Emmett Till's case, we call them martyrs for the cause, but they certainly didn't see themselves as that.
I would say not all martyrs are willing.
I understand. It's kind of a parsing of the words here, but
Because
I think
Martyrs Witness is when we go back to the
That's
origins
right.
of the word is a witness to the truth.
right. So that's what I wanted to tease out was
right. I mean, she's the only witness to her truth.
Unfortunately, yes.
And
That's right.
And cannot tell her story in any way.
just and I just kind of wanted to lay that out there because we know one of our ideas is words mean things.
Yes.
And we wanted to kind of go a little bit deeper with that.
Well, I understand what you're saying because I mean, I would say all martyrs are victims as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not all victims are martyrs.
No, but it may be a game of semantics, but we're always good at that too.
Exactly.
One thing I want to mention about Emmett Till, which I found interesting, and so this just proves that even those who are part of the incident can reform. So the woman that he was accused of grabbing and making lewd advances to, the woman who was with her husband owned that grocery store, she recanted. Her story.
She did. Yes.
She recanted and said that he did not do any of those things, and what happened to that boy shouldn't happen to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And when she said boy, she did not mean it in the
pejorative sense.
right. She's talking about a teenage boy.
Yeah,
correct.
Just a young
just a young man. And I was pleased to see that because it is proof that not everyone is irredeemable.
Mm-hmm.
Hearts can change.
Hearts can be changed.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. They can soften.
Yeah. So before we go on, we need to
bourbonify.
Yes, to talk about our bourbon. I am finishing the last of my double oaked bottle. I'm going to have to go out and get a new one. Always a good bourbon. I wanted to do this one first because I knew we would have a good reason to. But what are you guys drinking?
So I have some of your Four Roses neat.
Yes.
We are recording today in the atrium of Studio R, one of our favorite places.
Well, they're all our favorite places. That's right.
Yeah, even though it's just a winter view, we do at least have a view and
yes, view on three sides. Nice wooded landscape in the back. It's great.
Absolutely.
My empty pool with the ripped liner.
I wasn't going to mention it, sir, but you're certainly welcome to. We look forward to the day when it's fixed and it's summertime out and we can, bask in the glorious sunlight, which seems to have gone away these days. But I'm doing the drinking your Knob Creek Maple.
Yes, the maple.
You guys know I'm a sugaraholic. I love the sweet stuff, always have, and that's this is
my breakfast bourbon.
This has got it. This is way sweet, but I like it that way. It's still got a little bit of the nice burn, stays in the throat and all that stuff like that. So it's
You okay there?
I'm trying to cover while you talk, while you cough there, Marty, to make sure that you don't. We don't want to have any Heimlich maneuvers or any of that sort of stuff going on here.
You don't want to get it all over the equipment.
I think a little Four Roses
Tickle in the throat there. Exactly.
So that's what we're all drinking. And like I said, the reason I chose what I consider the good stuff, the best of what I had, because obviously you need to raise a glass to all of those who fought, all of those who were leaders, but especially all of those who were the unknown stories, the foot soldiers who did the massive amount of work. All those people following behind Dr. King on the marches. All those people who stayed off the buses.
That's right. And
all of
those
those
who still fight it today.
Who were the silent martyrs, and all those who still fight today.
Yeah.
To them and to what they have done for all of us.
That's very well said, Robert.
Yes, Robert has a way.
Well, that is why he's now called Robertus Malleus.
That's right.
I was wondering
Malleus.
if you guys were going to get that out.
Yeah, so yeah, we've taken to Latinizing our noms de pod. And so he is Robertus Malleus, Robert the Hammer. And you are...
Don't ask me to do that because I haven't got it written down in front of me.
Franciscus Humanitatis.
That's it, exactly.
There you go,
yes.
Franciscus Humanitatis.
Because I don't think I've actually spoken it aloud since we came up with this. That's right. Francis the humanist is the intention here, anyway.
And Martinus Gentis,
Yes.
I think is the correct Latinizing.
Is it Martinus or Martinius?
I think it's Martinus because I looked that up and it's Martinus.
Okay, just
no
curious
extra
here.
I.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. That's right.
The Martinius has the I in there means something different.
Gotcha.
I don't think it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a feminine name,
No.
but the proper male version of Martin is Martinus.
Martinus Gentis. Martin the Hammer. Hammer.
You can't take it.
Martin the
It's already
Heathen.
taken.
The
That's right.
Heathen.
The Heathen. That's right.
Martin the Heathen. So you will see those names as we kid ourselves and joke around more on www.snakesandotters.com.
That's right.
We've been posting a ton of content,
We have actually.
including
Yes.
an argument about steak that we had to
Yes, the great
apologize.
steak debate of 2021.
We had to apologize to Robert.
That's right. Yes, that's right. My face turns red even now, listeners. You can't see it, but it's there. Yes.
All right. Well, I had several more here. I kind of would like to move on from the martyrs, though, and
Okay.
talk about some other pioneers.
Sure.
Because I want to make sure we get these folks in during the episode, too. And the first one is Pam Greer.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it would seem, well, that's just an actress. Well, yeah, but she's kind of a special actress. Obviously got famous in the blaxploitation films as they came to be called. But really, she's kind of the first black woman action hero.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And some of those blaxploitation films, now they didn't have quite the production value,
No.
but doggone it, they were kind of fun.
Yeah.
And she's fun in them.
They were. It was all of a sudden, it's kind of like the world didn't know what to do with black actors and actresses at that time because all of a sudden.
It was no longer proper that the only role they had was as a maid or a butler.
That's exactly right. And the world had figured this out, but they said, well, now what do we do? And then you've got, and some of these are cheesy as hell.
Yeah.
But it was just Hollywood figuring it out. I mean,
Well, Hollywood can be cheesy with white actors, too.
well, that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
the early 70s was pretty damn cheesy a lot of time. I mean, yes, you've got the French Connection and The Godfather, but you've also got Blackula.
Yes.
And a few of them, which was actually fun, mind you.
Right, but they're part of, again, we talked about this, that late 60s, early 70s neo-realism
Yeah.
in films. Again,
Trying to
French
figure
Connection is a very, very gritty crime film.
which would have never been done before.
No.
Yeah, you're still coming out of the John Wayne westerns like Rio Lobo, Rio Bravo, and some of the others, which you didn't have realism. That was
Right.
not the intention.
Hollywood was all about fantasy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the reason the 70s are such a stark difference is because they went to everyday life.
Yeah.
Whereas all the movies before that, you recognize it's an idealized version of whatever.
Yeah.
That's why you could do an epic. In
Yeah,
the 60s and 50s.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
nobody does those anymore.
And by the time you get to the 70s, the historical
Sure
epic's
they do.
dead.
Well, I mean, at the
Everything
time.
Marvel Comics, Marvel Cinematic Universes. It's
Well,
an epic.
It's an epic.
Well, this is true.
But at that point, again, it's a revival of those.
It is. Yeah,
Because
that's correct. Now,
as of the
now.
of the 70s, the historical epic or the epic film of any kind is basically dead. The musical's dead,
Uh-huh.
and people are they're seeing the Tet Offensive
Well,
on their
that's right.
television.
Vietnam had a lot to do with it.
And what's at the movie theater is Beach Blanket Bingo,
Not,
and
or-
on your TV, the Viet Cong are being executed.
That's right. That's why Gomer Pyle and
there's
the
a
Beverly
break there.
Hillbillies and Green Acres all died, and you get Maude,
yeah,
and you get Archie Bunker,
Yeah.
and you later on you get Apocalypse Now.
yeah.
Which
So
is,
films in the 70s, they knew realism was going to appeal to the audience, and then you're right. What do the filmmakers do? And you make these black films that are also very gritty, Shaft and
Yeah, thank
Coffee
you. Yes.
and Foxy Brown. Coffee is the one that I like. Pam Greer is excellent in it. It's so much fun.
Mhm.
And there is also a statement in these films too,
Yes.
in that there's a reaction against the paternalism of, well, the only roles we can let blacks have in films is like pimps and drug pushers.
Right.
In a realistic
right
portrayal.
in a
That's correct.
Pam Greer film, there's no tolerance for it. That's what she's out to do.
Right.
She's taking on drug pushers, black or white,
Mhm.
and it's really like, it's not this. Well, that's an acceptable thing in the black community. Let them be pimps. It's okay. And these films are a real strong reaction to that. In that,
no, it's not okay.
it's not okay
Right,
to be exploitive of each other or of anyone else.
Right.
And so, Coffee, she, kills a guy with a hairpin, and it's
Kicks butt and takes names.
Yeah,
That's right.
so Pam Greer's still out there, and she's a real pioneer.
Yeah.
When you start to think about her career, and it's pretty awesome.
Mhm.
Quentin Tarantino, again, a huge fan. Put her in Jackie Brown.
Yes.
That's
Yes,
right.
it was almost a revival of the blaxploitation genre.
Yeah.
In its own way, because it's somewhat similar. But yeah, I'd almost forgotten about the Jackie Brown movies. Yeah.
Yeah, Jackie Brown is it's based on an Elmore Leonard novel.
Great writer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've got a bunch of Elmore Leonard on my shelf, and Quentin Tarantino bought the rights. I think it's to Rum Punch is the one Jackie Brown's based on, and swapped a couple things around and decided to make it a vehicle for Pam Greer.
Yeah, if you go to the male side, I mentioned this during the show prep. Sidney Poitier is the first, not quite superstar, but I mean he did a crossover role basically. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is the movie that he's most known for, where he broke that barrier, because unlike the Pam Greer stuff where it was the black setting, so to speak, this is firmly in the white world.
Right, yeah, a black man in the white world, and articulate, handsome, and he's the doctor and all that sort of stuff. The movie itself was was intentional in that. And it was, Poitier has been one of the shining stars of cinema ever since then. I mean, To Sir with Love was huge. Lilies of the Field was huge.
What was the one where he was in the Southwest, ended up building a church for nuns?
That's the Lilies of the Field.
Lilies of the Field,
That's
okay.
right. Yes,
so I did not know the title of the movie, but I remember the movie. He's excellent. But he's an excellent actor, just goes to show.
And he mainstreamed black acting in a mixed race setting that could have never been done before. And it could be argued, I'm not sure anybody else could have pulled it off at the time he did it.
You want to talk about pioneers? Yeah. Nichelle Nichols.
I was kind of hoping Star Trek would come up with this. Yes,
that's one I hadn't thought about. That's a really
Oh yeah.
She had granted, it was a subservient in the sense that she was just the communications officer. She almost never went on away missions, although she had a couple.
Yeah. Well, by the time third season came around, they gave her some meatier stuff.
There's the first interracial kiss on television with William Shatner.
That's right.
That's her.
Absolutely.
And, she nearly left the show.
I was hoping you were going to tell the story.
Because she felt like it wasn't doing a good enough job, to make, it wasn't making enough of a difference.
Yeah.
Right.
And was it Hattie McDaniel?
No. She ran into Martin Luther King.
That's right.
She was in
There's a story with her and Hattie McDaniel, but I don't remember the details of that.
Yeah, you're right. But the big dog, and she talks about it in her book. Yes. In her book, she talks about this, and she's done it in many, many interviews about how because she was thinking of leaving after the second season, and she runs into Dr. King at an event, and she tells him about that, and he told her, and she says, he said, "You must not." And she was always struck by this. He says, because your position here is showing us as capable, as willing, wonderful partners in all of this. You're normalizing race relations. You can't leave.
Right. And that's really what the role was. There was nothing about her role that had anything to do with her being black.
Well,
nothing.
She was just another officer on the crew.
Exactly.
And I think that was also important too.
Very professional. There were certain episodes where she's not afraid to get underneath and fix things. She's done that in one of them. One of the great moments of her is in the third season, and otherwise not all that great episode when Abraham Lincoln comes aboard.
Oh yeah.
The Savage Curtain, and he says to her, and she was part of the scripting of all this when it went together. He says, "Oh, what a charming negress," and he says, "Oh my goodness, my dear, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you with that." She goes, "Why should I be offended, sir?" in our century, we've learned not to fear words. And Kirk says each one of us learns to be delighted with who we are. And he says, forgive me, my dear. I didn't realize that the foolishness of my generation was afraid of giving you offense when none was taken. It's a brilliant little thing about racism during that time there that so clearly states just exactly what we're working towards.
That's a great bit. Yeah,
it really is. Yes.
Again, it's the power of stories.
Mm-hmm. The power of stories.
Whether they are made up
Sure.
in Star Trek or the real ones.
Star Trek's made up? What?
Sorry. Damn it, I let the cat out of the bag.
That's right.
And so what you're saying is you're ready for Galaxy Quest and Star Trek's a documentary.
As long as I get to play the captain, okay. I don't have to play the captain. Science officer's okay. One of them. Sign me up. Sign me up, I'll be there.
Yeah. So one more person I wanted to talk about, and again, isn't always looked at as this, great pioneer, but to me, he is, and he just recently passed, and that's why I wanted to make sure I added him to our discussion, and that's Hank Aaron.
Oh yeah.
We should all remember that moment.
Oh,
gentlemen,
yeah.
I do. When he broke the record.
I do not remember the moment. No.
He was with the Braves at the time. Is
yes.
that right?
And he spent almost all of his career with the Braves, either in Milwaukee or in Atlanta, and because
he was traded to the Brewers after.
No. Atlanta Braves used to be the Milwaukee Braves.
I know, but he went to the Brewers.
Oh yeah, well
that was
after
much later. That was the last
tail end.
The last 2 years.
Right.
I think
make sure that
I
didn't get all that together. But that's right.
I think he wanted to go back to Milwaukee.
Right. No, it's because I remember, and you guys know this. Baseball was big in my household growing up.
Yes.
We watched it all the time. And this was broadcast on national television when he broke Babe Ruth's record.
Right, because they're waiting for the record to be broken.
Because nobody had ever been able to do it. And they actually preempted prime time to show the moment at the stadium in Atlanta when he gets, after he breaks the record, the whole thing afterwards. And I was enraptured. What? Somebody broke Babe Ruth's record? I didn't know who he was, but I never forgot him after that. Mm-hmm. He's the guy. Yeah. He did something.
Yeah, for a long time, I always thought he was, that they always have that greatest living ball player kind of for the retired players.
Sure.
And sometimes it's Stan Musial or whoever, but to me, it's been Hank. This town, we always listen to the Reds on the radio or the Cardinals. And of course, for a long time, I think the Braves and the Reds were probably in the same division of the National League.
One time they would have been,
So they played a lot, and that was on the radio a lot, and you heard about Dale Murphy, and you heard about Hank Aaron. But, not only being the home run king, but the first black man, and then overtaking a white man's record.
Yes.
So he was really a groundbreaker, and to me, he's still the home run king.
Yeah.
Okay, that other fellow that they played in Pittsburgh and San Francisco. It's Hank.
Wow.
And he overcame so much to be so great. Because again, he's a guy that played in the tail end of the Negro Leagues. There was a time he wouldn't even been able to be in the major leagues.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And got into the major leagues.
And of course, prior to him, Jackie Robinson paved the way.
Right. Yeah.
He was the guy who made it possible for all the other guys to follow. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that Major League Baseball has done, which I'm sure you have seen, you may not have, Francis, you probably did, or if you did, probably didn't think much of it because you're not the baseball guy of us. But the Major League Baseball has decided that the Negro League records now count as Major League
yes, I heard that. I did hear that, yes.
So immediately the question was, well, what about Josh Gibson? Is he the new home run king? And unfortunately, no, because of his 900 and some odd home runs that he supposedly hit, most of those were against non-professional, or not most, but a good deal of them were against non-professional teams.
Kind of barnstorming games. That was very much a thing in the Negro Leagues.
Yes.
Yeah, you just travel somewhere and some town would get together a team, and then Josh Gibson would drill the ball into the next pasture.
County, on 5 consecutive at bats. Right.
So
there's no doubt he could have been the home run king if he had played against all major league level players. because Negro Leagues, they were major league caliber players.
Yeah.
They really were.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that they're getting their
And they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic.
That's terrific. Yeah. And you're right. You talk about Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and Buck Leonard.
Satchel Paige. Oh my gosh.
And men like that. And then you start with Jackie Robinson, and then from there you go Willie Mays,
right.
and then on to Roberto Clemente and
truly one of the great humanitarians.
Yeah. But Hank, of course, I mean, there were death threats. Don't you pass that white man's record? And
which interestingly enough,
took all of that stuff in grace.
Roger Maris, he got the same death threats.
Yeah.
For not because that white man's record, but because he was going to break, or he was on his way to breaking Babe Ruth's single season.
Yeah.
Right.
And he ended up with 61, and of course he almost had a nervous breakdown. For doing that.
I know, it's a shame too. I mean, well, death threats are nothing new, folks. We all know that.
Unfortunately, no. But you know what? When a black man, who's breaking ground receives it, it's a lot more serious.
That's correct.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
That's very much so.
But the image of him. Again, it was at a home game in Atlanta.
Yep. He hit County Stadium.
He hit 715. And he's rounding the bases. And then there's a white man charging at him. But it was just somebody who wanted to hug him.
Right.
Just somebody who
probably
wanted to
scared the crap out of him.
He just kept on taking his bases.
Yeah.
But
those white people that came up and patted him on the back as he's trying to round the bases. Because he has to touch all four for it to count.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was just a guy that wanted to pat him on the back.
Mm-hmm. And my goodness, how things have changed.
Which
kind of made
it amazing.
This was 1973.
Four. I'm pretty sure it's 4.
It's 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But still, it's no more than 10 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act.
That's right. And isn't that amazing how the world has changed?
And you got to wonder.
And this is the South, too, folks. This is Georgia.
It is.
I mean, maybe that's the best way to end this episode is talk about how the hell, isn't that a good exemplar of how things have changed?
I think I think all of these positive.
Oh no, you're right. It's let's see, it is 1970. Oh no, I guess it isn't. It's 1973.
Okay.
73.
Yes.
So 9 years then after the passage of the Civil Rights Act. But one of the things that all of these.
No, I'm wrong again. I'm sorry.
Please correct yourself.
That's all right.
We get it right. We always like to get right.
Yeah.
April 8th, 1974.
Okay.
So it's very early in the 74 season.
Yes.
And because he had hit 713, I guess in late in 73.
We needed a little good news in April of 74 because Nixon resigns only 4 months later.
Yeah. Well, it's a tumultuous time, but amidst all that tumult, the thing that I take from all of these stories, now granted, we take it more as observers than somebody who's directly impacted. And I recognize that.
Yeah.
And maybe that detachment in that respect, maybe helps us maybe grant a little bit of perspective or a little bit of an angle that maybe you don't always get. And or maybe not. Maybe I'm blowing smoke up everybody's ass. But I think that all of these things, including the stuff that's gone on in the last year, with all the protests against the killings of black men and women,
here locally,
here locally, whether any of the shootings are justified or not is not the point.
Right.
All of these moments and the fact that there's always a progressive groundswell of support for those who are oppressed or wronged by those who are not members of their group shows that we don't always get it right as the United States, but we are always trying to get it right.
Yeah.
It's a long, slow road, or road to hoe, if you want to use that metaphor. And we'll take some steps forward and we'll take some steps back.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in general, the trajectory is always a positive one.
It takes time and generations to really notice it.
It does. And when you're in the middle of it,
which is that's us.
It's no,
we're post. We're post. You're right.
Well, no, we're not even in the middle of the current stuff because we're just not. It doesn't affect us the same way it does those who are African American.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
No. I was
We're in the
thinking
middle of it in
time.
the sense of we are observers. I'd like to think we are intelligent and thoughtful observers.
Yes.
And that's why, even for all of the horrible things that happen, I still see positive progress as a nation. And, maybe that offends some people. If it does, that's on you because a lot of people, when they're caught up in the middle of everything,
Mm-hmm.
they can't see the progress. To them, it's no different than 1866. And not everybody's like that, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there are some who are. And there are some who still think that, as the current president once said about a former political foe, that that foe wanted to put all black people back in chains, which is astoundingly stupid and offensive.
Yes, that is.
Yet he said it, didn't get any grief over it, which goes to show that, progressives and conservatives have a long way to go.
Yep.
Well, the political process tends to make people stupid.
Well, as we said, you can't make peace or bargain with the devil, so everybody has to be destroyed.
Yes, by whatever means are necessary. Okay, palate cleanse time. Let's move.
Let's move on to actually. We're getting right at about 50 minutes, so I think it's time to wrap up. So
wonderful.
That episode really worked. That was what I was hoping for. We had really good discussion, and we kept some names alive, some stories, kept those stories alive, and that's.
Yep. And hopefully, I encourage everybody. Whenever we talk about something you don't know about, especially in the history of it, go look it up.
Go look up James Meredith and go look up Alberta.
It's not
Odell
hard.
Jones.
You don't have to do go to the library. You've got this little thing called the internet. It's actually very helpful.
Yes, it's all on your phone.
That's right.
Some knowledge of the world is in your hand.
And yet, what are we doing?
TikTok.
Angry Birds and TikTok, and, Bejeweled and Candy Crush.
Candy Crush, yeah. So
all those things.
So anyway, good episode, fellas.
Yep.
That was
good.
Super where I wanted to go. Francis, it's your turn, man. What's up next?
Totem of honor, boys. We have to come up with something to talk about next time. We never are short for that. We've always figured out ways to give great quotations their due. You never know where we're going to go. Well, that's not true. Sometimes we have a theme, but not always. Next month, no, it's wide open, folks. We get to talk about anything we want to. Wonderful stuff. Join us.
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes published every Friday at noon Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a comment or review because that helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next week. Same snake time, same otter channel.